Hello and welcome to this branding workshop. My name is Heather Davis and I'm the Sales and Operations Execution Lead for Kellogg's UK and Ireland. So the contents of this webinar today will be covering an introduction to Kellogg's and the Kellogg's brand, branding basics, what you would need to know if you were starting a brand from scratch, and then brand interaction, followed by an exercise afterwards, how the brands interact in store. So we'll start off with Kellogg's. So who are we? Where did we come from? So Kellogg's was founded back in 1906, so 114 years ago, by Mr. William Keith Kellogg, who you can see over on the right-hand side of the screen there. And his signature, which is center screen, still makes up the logo that we use on our boxes today. And the very first cereal off the line back in 1906 was the world-famous Kellogg's cornflakes, which you can buy across the world today. So who are we? So at Kellogg's, we have a vision to enrich and delight the world through foods and brands that matter. And our vision is who we aspire to become. It's who we want to be on our best day. And our purpose of nourishing families so they can flourish and thrive is the natural outgrowth from this. It defines why we exist as a company and the role that we want to play in the world. And having this clearly defined vision and purpose really helps to connect the work that we do on a day-to-day basis with the long-term vision of Kellogg's. So connects my team, myself, the wider UK business with the work done over in Kellogg's in the States and the rest of Europe and Asia. So really crucial to have this vision and purpose for our global company to align us to that long-term vision. So to tell you a little about our history, so as I mentioned, started in 1906 back in Battle Creek, Michigan. Shortly afterwards in 1914, expanded over to Canada, and then the first overseas expansions were to the UK and Australia back in the 1920s, and then through to, we had then had Latin America and Mexico in the 50s, Asia and Japan in the 60s, and further markets beyond that. So you can see over 100 years of heritage and over 100 years of progressive growth. And it's across this period, in particular between the 1930s and the 1980s, that a number of our iconic food brands were brought in. So we have Tony the Tiger over there, who you'll recognise from Frosties packs. Got All Brand Special K came in along this time, and Rice Krispies as well, with Snap, Crackle and Pop on the box, as well as many others. But it's not only through our own core Kellogg's brands that we've grown across this period. We've also acquired brands over this time. So we have Eggo as part of our frozen foods proposition over in the US. We have Kashi and Morningstar Farms. And then a particularly important one for the UK was the acquisition of Pringles back in 2012. So whilst Pringles are owned by Kellogg's under the Kellogg's brand, they don't hold that Kellogg's signature logo on the cans, as they are managed as a separate brand and a separate proposition for customers. So an area of our business that you may be less familiar with is around the WK Kellogg Foundation and this commitment to better days and better lives. So the WK Kellogg Foundation was set up back in the 1930s by Mr. William Keith Kellogg, you can see over on the right over there. And it's a fantastic organisation which is a completely separate legal entity to the Kellogg's food business, and it's actually our largest majority shareholder. And they do brilliant work across the world with farmers on sustainable agriculture, families and communities, and ending child poverty, and working towards that tirelessly. And how we see this feed through in the UK is our involvement in breakfast clubs, for example. You can see centre screen there. So we've been involved in breakfast clubs for over 22 years now, where we work to provide grants and provide food to schools to support children who perhaps would have had to go without breakfast otherwise. A recent example of our involvement in these areas also would be our involvement in Marcus Rashford's Food Child Poverty Task Force, along with a number of other suppliers and retailers as well. And our work in this commitment to better days and better lives goes beyond this, and we also regularly make updates to our food and to our recipes to ensure that we're still meeting this vision and purpose that we set out for ourselves. So if we take a look at Cocoa Pops, for example, versus the recipe that we're using in 2017, the product that you see on shelves right now has 50% less sugar than it did then. We've also made changes to our salt levels. So the last 2 decades, we have reduced our salt levels by 58%. And we've also introduced vegan and organic options. And even in our packaging, you may have seen recently, as part of our pledge to have 100% recyclable, reusable or compostable packaging by 2025, we're also trialling a new Pringles can, which is made of 90% recycled paper, which is available in selected stores right now. So we're constantly evolving and changing and working towards that commitment of better days and better lives in line with our brand vision and purpose. So we have here just a few of our well-known and well-loved brands. Hopefully you'll recognise many of them, potentially even have some of them in your cupboards right now. But Kellogg's across the globe, we market more than 1,500 brands in over 180 different countries, and we're regularly recognised for our brand building and our responsible brand leadership across the world. And as a result of these factors, we regularly receive accolades such as world's most ethical brands, best workplaces for diversity. One of our most recent honours came from the Reputation Institute as part of their RepTrack 2020 study. Now, this is a study of over 500,000 consumers on over 500 brands. And this study named Kellogg's the most reputable company in Britain and the most trusted UK food and drink company, which is a huge honour and a huge privilege that we're all very, very proud of. Now, the reason for sharing this is to hopefully highlight to you that a brand is far more than just a name and a logo. So what is a brand? So we have a great quote here from Seth Godin, that a brand is a set of expectations, memories, stories and relationships that taken together account for a consumer's decision to choose one product or service over another. So the starting point of your brand really is a brand promise. It's what do you want consumers to think, to feel, to say about your brand at any brand touch point that you have with them, whether that's through advertising, whether that's through your packaging when they pick the product up on shelf or online, or whether it's consuming or using that end product. It's crucial that your brand vision and your brand promise pulls through in all of these brand touch points. So starting a new brand, so the brand foundations, the core point that you need to start with is your brand values. It's your core behaviours and beliefs. What does your brand do and why? If we think about the Kellogg's vision and purpose that I started with, you can see from what I've talked through so far that the vision and purpose pull through to every decision we make about our brands, about our business. They're intrinsic to the way that we run the business. So crucial to start with a very clear understanding of what your brand values are. And then you move on to the brand drivers. So this is a more detailed and consumer-focused view, and this is understanding what drives consumers to purchase your brand. So if it's a food product, is it based on superior taste versus competitors, or is it particular functional health benefits that it has? If it's a luxury good, is it the way the consumer feels when they're using your product? Or in an example of luxury car brands, for example, is it what owning that brand tells others about the individual? Or if it's a staple product, is it perhaps the value that is your point of differentiation? So crucial to understand these two areas as the foundation for building your brand from. And the next area to consider, an area that you want to spend a significant amount of your time, is understanding your consumer segmentation. For any MPD you bring to market, it's crucial that you understand why consumers want and need your product. It could be that you're bringing the best piece of MPD to the market in the last decade. If you don't have that clear understanding of who will buy it and why, you significantly diminish the chances of that product being bought on a shelf. So really key to invest some significant time here to understanding your consumer. And the 4 key areas to focus on would be demographic, geographic, behavioural and attitudinal. So on the demographic side, this is physical characteristics. This could be age, gender, or family status, perhaps, depending on what your product is. Geographic would be potentially where the consumer lives, but possibly also where they work, where they commute. And then behavioural is around what does this consumer do? So their shopping behaviours, do they perhaps shop frequently at convenience stores, or are they more likely to do a larger stock-up shop at an out-of-town store? Where do they spend their leisure time? So do they go to the gym? Would they maybe see digital media at the gyms, perhaps in shopping centres, for example? And then attitude would be around what benefits the consumer is seeking. So if we think of a functional product like toothpaste, which has a very functional purpose in cleaning your teeth, the individual might actually be thinking of particular benefits around whitening, enamel protection, sensitive teeth. So there are many different levels that you can look at this through to get a full rounded understanding of who your consumer is. And what you'll find in a practical sense is when you are marketing your product, your messaging would focus on the behavioural and the attitudinal elements. So what does the consumer do? What do they want and why? Whereas the demographic and geographic elements of the segmentation would come more into play in where you put your media spend when you're buying your media. So if you had an example perhaps of a low sugar children's cereal, your messaging for your behaviours and attitudes might focus around parents wanting to buy something healthy for their children that they still love the taste of. The demographic and the geographic would focus on being marketed towards families with children. On the geographic side, you might have a focus on higher affluence families, of which would have a potential over-indexing in the southeast. So that might be where you would focus more of your marketing spend. So you can start to see how this comes to life in a very practical sense as well. And once you have this understanding of your consumer, you can move on to thinking in detail around your brand communication. So the who, what, why, where, and how of communication. So to look into these in a little more detail, we have the who, which links back to knowing your consumer. And you may have additional considerations, like I mentioned, with a new low sugar cereal for children. Whilst the child is the end consumer, they are, based on age, perhaps more unlikely to be buying the product, and it's more likely to be the parents. So does your messaging actually need to contain more insight for the parents than the child? The what is the what do you want to tell them? So if it's a functional health product, perhaps painkillers or medicine of some sort, the what might need to be very factual, whereas if it's a luxury good, is the what more about the experience that the individual will have. And then the why is very crucial. The why is simply, why does it matter to that individual? So if you had a pet food example, the what might be around particular nutritional elements, low salt, high in certain nutrients, but the why does that matter, is for nourishing the pet and the care that they want to give the pet, the attention. So the why is crucial and really differentiates, again, your message further. The where is, where are they more likely to see your messaging? So based on your age demographic, might the individual be more likely to see social media advertisements rather than print media advertisements? Or depending on how much money you have to market this product, is the where truly your packaging? Is that the only touch point that the individual will have with your brand initially? And then the how is, how do you pull this together? So taking into account these factors, how do you pull this together with consistent visuals, consistent imaging, and a consistent voice for your brand? And also, how do you want to evolve this messaging over time? So is it perhaps, if we think about an item that's stocked on a supermarket shelf, on your packaging for the first 6 months, do you perhaps want to have a new flash for some disruptive imagery to draw the consumer's eye to something that's new on shelves that they haven't seen before? Do you then want to evolve it in the 6 to 12 month period, perhaps once you have more of a loyal consumer base? Do you want to evolve it to talk about some of the functional properties? Do you then want to go further and talk more about your brand image, your brand as a whole? And how do you link this up with your supply chain to ensure that whatever you have on pack is in line with any media that you have in store at the time? So whether that's aisle fins, whether that is in-store sampling, or marketing online perhaps, how do you ensure that this flows throughout the process seamlessly for the maximum impact to your customers? So talk through the branding foundations, the branding fundamentals. And as I mentioned, one of the key areas where you'll want to focus a significant amount of your time is on understanding your consumers. So I have an example here of work that was undertaken by Kellogg's, huge consumer survey across thousands of cereal category consumers a number of years ago, where we were able to split out consumers into 6 key segments, broadly falling under those who are seeking taste and indulgence, health and control, and those looking for a naturally nourishing diet. So I'll talk you through each of these consumer profiles in detail to give you a bit more understanding of the level of, in particular on the behavioural and the attitude side, the level of understanding and detail that you need to go into to get a full rounded picture of your consumer. So we have first up over on the left, the carefree indulgers. So carefree indulgers love treat food. It's indulgent, it's rich, it's instant. It's the kind of food that can feel like a real comfort or a reward. And the most extreme carefree indulgers treat themselves whenever they like and can interestingly be quite judgmental about those who spend too much time and energy on focusing on diet. Then moving along, we have the sweet satisfiers. So sweet satisfiers love treat food, but the difference here is it has to be sweet. They talk about getting energy, particularly in the morning, either as part of a generally healthy diet or can be a less than ideal diet that they know they should change, but don't necessarily have the willpower to. And they do struggle to avoid loading up the basket with treats. Then we have the plain traditionalists. So plain traditionalists are traditional in both their behaviours and their tastes. They're very routine driven and eat the same brand day in, day out. They love both the taste and the texture of the grain in combination with milk, and they buy on repeat, picking up the same brand week after week. And this means that they want great deals and they do scrutinise the price per gram. So again, you can start to see how this level of understanding becomes very useful in practically marketing and pricing your products. And then we have the conscious controllers also in the health and control area. So conscious controllers are focused on their weight. They want to make choices that will help them lose or maintain weight. They also follow a lot of rules that will help them achieve their goal and believe in breakfast in order to get their metabolism going. So interesting use of language there around that metabolism boost early in the day as well. And then over on the naturally nourishing side, we have balanced explorers who don't think too long and hard about what they eat. They understand the rules of a healthy diet and can generally stick to conventional wisdom without too much trouble. They can get bored though, so they do like to choose a cereal that's an interesting eat and will mix their foods so they can get a great taste and texture that they find interesting. And then finally over on the right there we have the discerning naturalists. So discerning naturalists take care of themselves and exercise is also very important to them. They love quality and will invest their time and money for this and are very interested in ingredients and nutrition. So you can start to see just the level of well-rounded picture that we start to get from consumers here. And you may already be thinking which area you fall under as well. If I show you an example of how this plays out into what you see on shelves. So I have an example here of WK Kellogg no added sugar granola, and this meets the needs of the naturally nourishing consumers most of all. So if you take a look at what you can see on the box here, we have the WK Kellogg brand, but also in the brand logo we have images of leaves and of wheat and of barley, so you get that feel of a natural focused product. You've also got very key call outs on the front of no added sugar and high in fibre. And interestingly, we also have this window cut out here in the box so you can see straight through to the food inside the box. Now, this isn't actually something that we have on all of our cereal boxes, but if you think about the language that we've used to talk around those consumers falling under the naturally nourishing area, who like to know what they're putting into their bodies, who like to understand the foods that they're eating, this is key for those consumers to be able to see what's inside that box, what are they going to be having for breakfast. And even on the sides of the pack, you see call outs here around nutritious, uplifting plant-based foods, and the flags of having no added sugar or artificial sweeteners, high in fibre, no artificial colours or flavours, palm oil free and vegan. So you can start to get a real understanding of how this consumer segmentation really plays into what comes onto a shelf, what you see on that box. So really crucial to invest a great deal of time here. So to help bring this to life a little more, we do have a few examples of who may fit into these areas. I should flag that none of the 4 individuals on screen were part of the initial consumer study, but this is to hopefully illustrate who might be in this area. So we have Gwyneth Paltrow over here as a potential discerning naturalist. She is known to have her health and wellbeing website, which has a great focus on organic and healthy and whole foods. We then have Oprah Winfrey, who will potentially fall under the segment of conscious controller. She was known to be the face of Weight Watchers over in the US for a number of years. And then we have Nigella Lawson, potentially a carefree indulger, talks a lot around rich, indulgent, chocolatey foods. And then Louis Tomlinson potentially falling under the sweet satisfier area, reason being that when we delisted Ricicles a number of years ago, Louis Tomlinson took to Twitter to express his dissatisfaction in that decision. So hopefully this gives you a view of just how well-rounded that view needs to be of who your consumer is to understand what they want from you and why. So we have here a few examples on the screen of brands that meet the needs of the different consumer segments. So Cocoa Pops and Crave will possibly meet the needs, or more likely meet the needs, of carefree indulgers with that focus on the rich chocolatey cereals. Cocoa Pops, of course, turning the milk chocolatey. Crunchy Nut, likely to be picked up by sweet satisfiers. And plain traditionalists, your cornflakes, Weetabix. So you can see the brands that we have and the breadth that we have across the cereal category here. Now, another area to be aware of and mindful of when you are branding your products is promotions. So promotions are a great way to drive trial, in particular when you're starting up a new brand. The areas to consider here would be around reaching the maximum number of consumers for your spend. So for example, if you had secured an aisle end for 2 of your products for a certain promotional period, you might be initially looking to promote Special K and All Brand together, but actually they meet the same needs of the same consumer group of the conscious controllers. So whilst there might be some differentiation in between taste of those who prefer one cereal to another, what you might actually find is that you are cannibalizing your own sales. So Special K consumers potentially trying All Brand and vice versa. So the more effective use of that space would be to promote it alongside a product which meets the needs of a different consumer group. So perhaps you might promote Special K alongside Cocoa Pops or Crunchy Nut Granola, for example. And you may also have additional considerations around the particular in-store event that might be promoted at that time. So if it's back to school, do you focus more on your lower age demographic? Or if it's Christmas, you may not have any particular age demographic that you want to focus on, but you might have key on-pack messaging, on-pack artworks that you want to highlight to drive that consumer interest as well. So you can see that there are a number of different factors to take into consideration when building and maintaining a brand. So we've talked through the starting up of your brand values and brand drivers, crucial as your foundations, that everything you do with your brand is based upon from there onwards. Then consumer segmentation, so really understanding who your consumer is and what they want and need from you. And then onto your messaging and your promotions in store. And also, how do you evolve that message over time? Consumer tastes are continually evolving, and your brand message needs to do so as well. So finally, following this webinar, you will see the brand interaction website, brand interaction exercise on the IGD website, where you will have a number of Kellogg's brands and a blank account plan for promotions. Your task is to determine which consumer segment each brand meets the needs of, review which, if any, of the in-store activations fit with your consumer segment, and then create a promotional plan for the 4 given periods, maximising your brand's reach across the segments. So thank you very much for listening today, and best of luck with the exercise. Thank you.